that, we're going to go ahead and hop right into our presentation. I do appreciate you all taking time out of your schedule today to gain some information on the new changes to the law. And as you notice on our slide 1 here, House Bill 247 was the legislation that went through, and it is in reference to our Underground Utility Safety and Damage Prevention Act. There is a QR code here on your screen as well. If you utilize that QR code, that will take you directly to our law page. And as I had placed in the chat, you will also see, once again, there is the law. There is the current law, which is in effect through the end of the month. There is the new updated law. And then we will also have and talk a little bit about the reference guide as well. So with that, we'll hop right into our presentation. We have an overview here. There's a multitude of changes that have taken place within that law, and this slide does kind of give you a breakdown of that. We are going to talk about some of the changes under our definitions section of the law. We're also going to discuss a bit of changes for the facility operator responsibilities. We will then roll into some of the changes that the excavator, so you may wear both hats, both as an operator and also an excavator. So we will go through those changes. And then we will discuss some exemptions within the law. And then we will talk a little bit about the absence of a facility location. And we'll kind of dig a little deeper into that. And then we will finalize all the updates with the Underground Damage Prevention Review Board. So with that being said, I'm going to move right on into our presentation with changes for the current law and bill analysis. I did want to remind everyone that the way the law is laid out, you will notice in our excavation guide, if you have questions, they're pretty simple of where you need to go and find the answers. The way the law is laid out, you will first notice that there is a section on definitions. So a lot of times if you are unsure of what a tolerance zone is, you can go directly to the definition. So I would always refer back to your definitions when you're needing explanations. The other sections that are within the law, if there is a question of what the notification center's responsibilities are, that section is broken down under 87-120. Then you'll quickly roll right into the facility operator responsibilities, which is 87-121. So if you have a question of anything pertaining to the operator, it's all housed under that one section. And then 87-122 is the excavator responsibility. So we will certainly walk through a lot of different scenarios too as well throughout our presentation. All right, so hopping into some of the first changes, it is in regard to our definition. Currently in the law, 87-117-15 gives a definition for non-mechanized equipment, and basically it just states that it is hand tools. You'll notice on each of these slides, at the bottom of each slide, it does state that the bold print references a law addition. So as we go through, anything that you see that is bolded, that is a new change. That is an addition to the law, and that would also include any of the statutes. Once again, you may see a little bit of an underline, and we'll talk briefly about that. I just want to highlight that, but bottom line is anything unbolded is current law, anything bolded is new law. So with that definition of non-mechanized equipment, the definition soft dig technologies has been added to that, And the next bullet point down, we break that down and provide you a definition. Soft dig technologies is an excavation method that uses air or water pressure to break up soil and remove it with vacuum extraction. So as you'll notice in this photo, that is the use of vacuum excavation, and it will now be considered non-mechanized equipment. This law is effective October the 1st, so anything up through September, very end of September, will reference the old law. Moving forward, October 1 will reference the new law. Under the third bullet point, you'll notice within the definition of a tolerance zone, it states if the diameter of the facility is known, the horizontal distance of 1/2 of the known diameter plus 24 inches on either side of the designated center line. So this is a definition for the tolerance zone. What we have done is clarified. It was, it was a term, the distance was kind of understood that it was horizontal, but they did want to make it very clear that it did refer to horizontal. So some of the things you'll notice within the law change are just to clean up some of the understanding and the language that we've certainly used throughout the law, but this will clarify it. So this is the only changes within the definition section. And I will move forward into our facility operator responsibilities. As I stated before, it is located under 87-121, and the first change is under 87-121A1. This talks a bit about the APWA color codes and the marking standards, and it states here the operator shall, when marking as provided under this subdivision, use the APWA uniform color code. And then the new addition states where practical, painted surface marks should be of adequate length to distinguish from dots. If we have anyone on the call that is a locator, you guys can certainly reference the fact that as you're marking out facilities, you may place dots along the way until you have fully marked out that facility. And what the law is asking you to do is to make sure that you go back and provide adequate length of marks so that all the excavators can distinguish between those dots and know exactly where the utility has been marked. So this is a new change within the law that has been added. Moving down to our next change under 87-121B. Unless otherwise provided in a written agreement between the operator and the excavator, it has language has now been added to include an electronically transmitted written agreement. And then the operator provides, information to the excavator about the utility, but now we wanted to make sure that anything that was being done currently was documented in the law. And so this verbiage here, including an electronically transmitted written agreement, will be considered in a written agreement. Once again, I would always encourage you to document that information should you need it for future purposes. But that electronically transmitted written agreement could include email, text, and believe it or not, we still have some folks using fax. So it would include either of those 3 agreements. Moving forward into a couple more changes within the facility operator responsibility side. This is definitely a new change. Currently, under 87-121B1, the operator is to mark those facilities within 3 full working days. The language has changed to state that it is for a facility within 3 full working days prior to the work start date provided by the excavator. As we move over into the excavator section and talk a little more in depth about the work start date, that will be very, very crucial for our operators. Currently, if you place a ticket and it's transmitted, the operator is required within 3 full working days from the transmission to begin that process. Within the new law, that will begin from the work start date that the excavator provides. So if a good scenario is you've provided a request to dig, say 10 days ahead, and you went ahead and you placed that ticket will come into NC 811. It will be transmitted out to our facility operator. And from that point, they will be able to plan their work accordingly to locate those facilities, and then they will be required to mark those facilities 3 full working days prior to that work start date. So this is a great, hopefully a great change that will assist the locators to be able to plan their work a little better, instead of all of these tickets coming due at the same time. So big change moving forward. The additional change, which is new, and you'll notice the statute itself is in bold print as well, under 87-121B4, for an emergency request, an initial contact with the excavator shall be made within 3 hours. Currently, there is no actual response time for an emergency request outside of a normal 3 working day notice. There is policy from our facility operators. They may have a contract locator, and they may require that they provide a 2 or 3 hour response. So that would be considered policy. It is now moving forward as of October 1, an emergency request will be required to have an initial contact. So does that mean that you have to locate it within 3 hours? No. What it means is you have to have an initial contact to the excavator discussing the emergency request and determine, if you need to roll, or maybe you need to wait a couple hours for that excavator to be on site, or it will all be determining from your conversation. So once again, the key word here is initial contact. So just reflecting back on that change, right now the operators currently, the locators are reaching out to the excavators, but it will be now moving forward a required initial contact within 3 hours. And of course, as a best practice, we would always want to document any sort of contact. The next bullet that we're going to discuss is the requirement of the 3 hour notice should you see evidence of a facility or the facility operator has not marked. That is currently housed over in the excavator section. And so as we were looking at the law changes, we wanted to make sure that the responsibility that had been implied for the facility operator was also documented over in the facility operator responsibility. So as you see here, for a request of an unmarked facility required by 87-122C6, and that section is the excavator responsibility. The operator shall arrange for the facility to be marked within 3 hours from the time the additional notice is received by our notification center. So this is what we refer to as the 3-hour ticket. And if there is a complaint that comes before the review board, that currently that complaint has been referenced to the section of the excavator, but now it will be referenced to the facility operator, 87-121B5, should that facility operator not mark within 3 hours. Hearing none, we'll move over into the excavator responsibilities. Under section 87-122, you'll notice all of the responsibilities of the excavator are within this section of the law. One of the changes is under 87-122A, and that section is pretty detailed of the requirements. So it does require that the notice for any excavation or demo not involving a subaqueous facility. So subaqueous meaning underwater, that must be given no less than 3 working days before the proposed commencement date. The current law allows you to place your ticket within 3 up to 12 days prior, but now it will be no less than 3 full working days before the proposed work date. If you are requesting that a subaqueous facility be located, the term has also changed as well to state no less than 10 to 12 full working days, and that is a change from the current law stating within 10 to 20 days. So once again, this is the requirement of placing your notice within no less than 3 full working days prior to your work start date, and no less than 10 to 20 for subaqueous. So not a major change, it's just a little bit of verbiage change there, but we will always want to place those within 3 days prior to the work start date. Okay, so this here, this next change is a pretty large change. You'll notice under 87-122A, notice given pursuant to this subsection shall expire 28 calendar days after the work start date. So what that means is currently the law is a 15 working day notice is the length of the ticket. That will change to expire 28 calendar days after the work start date. So no excavation or demolition may continue after this 28-day period unless the person responsible for the excavation provides a subsequent notice. So that would be considered your update request. Oh. All right, so it looks like we got a couple hands raised. Let me see. I think Court. Feel free to ask your question.
I was going to go backwards, so a little bit. You know, you're at 87-122C10, but then if you look at the current law, 87-122C3 says that you can use mechanized means as necessary for initial penetration, you know, cutting asphalt, pavement, curbing.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
But under the new law, is that as good, but it's counterintuitive because it says you can't use it within 24-inch circumference of the pipe.
So it does allow you, and then it's not necessarily an exemption, but it does allow you certain things that you can and can't do. And even when we get into the exemptions, Court, there's some exemptions that a homeowner has, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, it does allow you just for the initial penetration to remove concrete. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, we've had dozens of damages just removing pavement.
And once again, you guys are the professional excavators in the field, and we will always preach place a locate. You can't go wrong by not having a locate. There are things within the law that do allow you to have exemptions or to do certain type of work, whether it be probing or, as you stated here, to remove some concrete. But you know better than anyone that you have no idea the depth of the utilities. There's been erosion, anything that could have happened over a course of time, could change the placement of that utility. So it's always a best practice just to call before you dig. All right, well, I guess with hearing none, then we'll go ahead and continue on. So once again, as I stated, it's very important that you remember that the life of a ticket now will be 28 calendar days starting from the work date. So let's talk a little bit about, once again, you place your ticket and you tell us that your work date will be October the 3rd. The operator responsibility is 3 working days prior to that. They are to mark those utilities. And the beauty of the law change now is currently, as the excavator, you lose 3 working days within the current life of the ticket. Now you will actually get those 3 working days back. So once again, it's really going to require you to plan your work, really hone in as best you can on that work date, because those responsibilities of the operator to mark are going to be keyed into that work date. The next change that we'll talk about under 87-122B5, the area of locate of the proposed excavation, which is limited to an area that the excavator reasonably believes may be completed within 28 calendar days from that work start date, and does not include any areas completed and accepted by the authorities having jurisdiction. So what we are asking you to do is to really plan your work and do not overpopulate our system with tickets for just in case type of work. We really want you to make sure, if you're placing that ticket, do you reasonably believe that you can complete it within 28 days? And also some key verbiage here that, potentially you could be called out to the review board is on areas that have been completed. If the work has been completed, we are asking you once again to not update that ticket. Because if it has been completed, we want you to remove that out of the system. That is, once again, just redundancy for the locators to go out and mark. So we really need you to manage your job sites. Hearing none, the next bullet is, this section really applies to our transmission pipelines and electric transmission. The change states that the excavator shall use non-mechanized equipment within a 24-inch circumference around oil, petroleum products, or highly volatile liquid pipeline systems. So once again, if you're if you're a gas pipeline system, PHMSA is going to require that the operator will be on site. So they're going to make sure that they're going to allow you what you can and can't do around their facility. But once again, you must use non-mechanized equipment. Within the tolerance zone of a pipeline system, the excavator shall use safe excavation practices, including but not limited to hand digging or potholing. So that is a new bit of language within that section. So once again, if you are working in and around any of those transmission lines, you're most likely going to receive some sort of communication from the pipeline operators. Moving on, that is all the changes that we have there. So moving on into the exemptions. The first bullet point in reference talks a bit about tilling of soil for agriculture and for gardening purposes. Under the 87-124 exemption, the first two exemptions currently in the law allow for the homeowner to dig within a right-of-way, easement, or permitted use with a shovel. So anything that's non-mechanized, the homeowner does have currently an exemption. If you are a homeowner and you're digging within a right-of-way, easement, or permitted use with mechanized equipment, you are required to place a locate. So it is very important that you know specifically where you're digging and what type of equipment you're using. And rolling into this this comment about the tilling of soil, the homeowner, if you are also planting a gardening or gardening purposes, if you're planting a garden, you are allowed to anywhere that encroaches on an operator's right-of-way, easement, or permitted use and is less than 12 inches in depth. So this one's very specific for the homeowner for gardening. So if you're planting a garden, you are able to use any sort of equipment within that easement permitted use, as long as it's less than 12 inches in depth. And then, of course, the farmer does have that exemption as well. All right. As we move down into the next exemption, as you'll notice here, there is an exemption for excavation by an operator or a surveyor with non-mechanized equipment. And that is if you are locating for a valid notification or for the minor repair, connection, or routine maintenance of an existing facility or a survey pen. You can also probe underground to determine the extent of gas or water migration. What has been added is to allow for your contractor to also have this same exemption. So effective October 1, if you hire an outside contractor, then they will also be allowed this exemption as well. Moving on to 87-124-6. Under the current exemption within the law, to kind of give you a little bit of history, in the past when the law was initially changed, it did name DOT within the law, and so that was removed back in 2019, and then moving forward, it was then stated that it was a governmental entity or routine maintenance of a right-of-way or any government or any other governmental entity. So that has the language has been cleaned up to remove those names. So it states any excavation or demo performed for the purpose of maintenance activities within the right-of-way are exempt. So basically, if a DOT, a city, a county, anyone that has utilities within a right-of-way, if there is work being done for the purpose of maintenance, and if you will note that that definition or that section of the exemption does include activities, whether it be emergency replacement of signs, it could be reshaping of shoulders and ditches, but it does also state that it does not include initial installation of traffic signs, traffic control equipment, guardrails, or drainage structures. So basically, in a nutshell, it just states here the same exemptions there, it's just the name governmental entity has been removed. When you move on down into that same section, go ahead, Mark, if you have a question.
Yeah, removing that kind of opens this up. Does that mean if we're working on a transmission line in a private right-of-way, we don't have to call? Same for the electric guys?
It only refers to the right-of-way, not
That's right.
private. So if you're talking about your private right-of-way for the operator,
Yeah, we have our transmission lines in right-of-ways that we own.
as long
Or-
as that, as long as the personnel that is doing the work is either on your payroll or it's your, your own staff. And
Right.
if you move down to the next section, it does not apply though if it is a contractor that is performing the work on your behalf. They are required to provide a locate.
Right. But that taking out the governmental agency part kind of opens it up to other utilities that are in
Absolutely.
private right-of-ways. Okay, just make sure it's clear. Thank
So the key word here is right of way. So if you have facilities within a right of way, whether it be governmental, city, county, as you said, any sort of utility within a right of way will have that exemption for the purpose of maintenance activities only. And then if it is a contractor doing work on your behalf within the right of way, they will be required to have a locate. That is not exempted. All right, so moving forward, that was all of the exemptions. The next section is new, and this section is housed under the 87-126, and this discusses damages. The new section that has been added is the venue for claims adjudication. Currently, if you are wanting to adjudicate a damage, you may have to go to another state to fight that. This was one of the items that one of our NUCA members had fought for, and also actually is one of our NC 811 board members. They fought for this to be added. So anytime there's a claims adjudication, it will occur within North Carolina and be held within the county of occurrence. So no longer would you be required to potentially travel to another state to adjudicate and fight that claim. So this is a brand new addition within section 87-126. Okay, moving forward. This is really, I think, a really nice win for the excavator, something that that stakeholder group really fought for. Currently in the law, if an operator who has been given notice as provided by General Statute 87-120D by the notification center, they fail to respond to a notice as provided under the General Statute 87-121. And once again, these sections are regarding the operator and the notification center, or they fail to properly locate the facility. The person excavating is free to proceed with the excavation, and neither the excavator nor the person financially responsible for the excavation will be liable to the non-responding or improperly responding operator for damages to the facility, to the operator's facility. So under current law, this is, you're allowed to do this now. So if you placed your ticket, there's been no response, then the law requires you to request a 3-hour request to make arrangement to have the facilities marked. If there's been no response or it's been improperly located, it does now allow you the ability to proceed. The new language that has been added is so long as the excavator has exercised due care to in preparing for or conducting the excavation. For the purposes of this section, the excavator shall be entitled to a presumption rebuttable by clear and convincing evidence. So basically, what that's going to mean is that the law is going to assume something in favor of the excavator. The excavator shall be entitled to a presumption rebuttable by clear and convincing evidence that it has exercised due care in preparing for and conducting the excavation where, and there's 4 points here, as long as the notification center has given the operator the notice required, the operator fails to respond to the notice or fails to properly locate, the excavator has complied with the requirements, and we just talked about those. That would require your normal ticket, and then if no response, the 3-hour. And then if the excavator did not have actual knowledge of the existence of a facility located within the area of the excavation to be performed. So once again, the excavator must comply with the responsibilities. And if so, then you have exercised due care. So this is a win for the excavator, and you will have the right to proceed. Hearing none, we will move over into our Underground Damage Prevention Review Board. We did have quite a few requests to be added to the law changes. As time has evolved, there had been policies that really needed to become law, some things that need to be changed. But the very first one is it requires the governor to fill vacancies within 60 days. And that is after the vacancy to the extent practical. The reason for this change was we had about 1.5 years that went by with a seat that was left vacant. And so moving into the next change, a quorum is met when a majority of the seated members of the board rather than 8 members. So because of some of the vacancies, it was hard to meet that quorum. So now these changes have been implemented effective October 1, and it will also allow the board members to attend meetings via conference call or other electronic means. To give you a little bit of history about the review board, currently the review board does meet quarterly. We have had a huge influx of complaints, and with that it has required that we meet interim. And what we have allowed the board members to do for those that cannot meet on site, they will be allowed to meet via conference call or electronic means, which we host those meetings through Teams. So once again, this is just to bring things up to current standards of what we're doing today. Some of the other changes is that the board will be establishing an internal attendance policy. In the event a board member resigns or fails to meet the criteria of the attendance policy, the board may appoint an interim member, and they will represent that stakeholder group until the governor does appoint a replacement for the remainder of the unexpired term. So these are some policies that we will be putting in place as an attendance policy, and we do have a dedicated attorney from the Department of Justice, so he does assist the board with creating policy. The next change was on the request of the board. The Utility Commission shall appoint a non-voting ex officio member as an administrative representative to the board. They will provide counsel and coordinate efforts. Currently, a request to the Utility Commission has been sent on behalf of the Underground Review Board, and we should hopefully have a representative moving forward after October 1st. That person will attend the meetings. They are unable to vote, but they can take any information back to help the Utility Commission run smoother. So that was a change. Currently, the board, if there has been a complaint made to for an alleged violation, currently the board is required to contact the persons within 10 days. That change will move to 15 working days effective October 1. So it will actually allow the administrative personnel a little bit more time to make sure that the complaint is an accurate and clean complaint with all the information, whether it be contact information, any of the documentation that's requested. Once that is supplied, then they would move forward with providing that report of violation. The next change is the board shall notify within 30 days each person who is determined to have violated the article. Currently, it just states that the board will notify each person. Now, the board will be required to, within 30 days, provide a response, or provide notification to that person. And that is of the recommended action or penalty. This is a major change, but basically it is, taking what was an interpretation back when the law was changed, and it's been updated to state under 87-129B2. If you are if you come before the board hears the case and they make a recommendation. If you do not agree with the recommendation, a person deemed to be in violation could request an informal conference before the board within 30 days of the determination. So you'll receive that letter, and it will provide you with the recommended action. If you disagree, you have 30 days to request that informal conference. The person must attend the informal conference in person. That is a requirement now. The person may be represented by an attorney or other person and present evidence and or make arguments in favor of the person's position. Once the informal conference has been heard, the board may reverse, modify, or uphold its original findings. If the board recommends the penalty, the board shall notify the Utilities Commission, and then they must issue an order imposing the penalty within 30 days. So this was the intent of the law when it was originally written. Upon review by the attorney, it was a little bit convoluted, so we wanted to make sure we got this cleaned up. And so if you request an informal conference and you still disagree with the outcome, then once the Utility Commission issues the order, then you will have the ability to request an arbitration, and you can, come forward for that as well. So there are additional options for you moving forward, but this is just a simple informal hearing after the initial violation. So moving forward, the Utilities Commission shall provide an annual report to the board of the compliance of persons on whom the fines or penalties have been imposed. Currently, as a member sitting on that board, I do, after each one of our board meetings, put together a slide, and I do provide that at our UCCs, of how many cases we heard, if there was a penalty imposed, if there's a Pikes Plus training. So now moving forward, the Utility Commission will provide us that information annually. Just for your information, through July of 2025, the board has issued year-to-date in fines of $153,000. Finally, the last change, if a penalty is not paid to the Utilities Commission within the 90 days of the issuance, the Attorney General, at the request of the Utility Commission, they can bring action in the name of the state of North Carolina in the Superior Court for Wake County to recover that penalty. So that is a new change. If the Utility Commission, upon their request, they can, ask the Attorney General to step in as well if that, if you have not paid your fine. So I do get a lot of questions about that, at UCCs, has people paid their fines? That is just something that we are unable to track, but now that will be a requirement by the Utilities Commission. With that, that is all the changes to the law. What we have put together is a reference guide. If you are attending any of your local UCCs this month, you can pick up a copy of those. We have had those printed in a very nice card stock that you can place in your vehicles, and you'll notice how it's laid out. In the first column, it talks about the area that we're discussing, and then the next column, it references what the what the current law currently says, and then the third column in red states the new law that's effective October 1. So basically we kind of reference this, the old versus new. And then to the very right, the very last column, it does give you the reference so that you can refer back to the law if you're looking to find it within the excavation guide. So that you can download this reference guide as well on that law page. It is a front and back, and then there's the back page of that as well. With that being said, our final slide here also, if you did not get the QR code when you popped into the training, you can scan that as well, and it'll take you directly to the law page.